Hello, it's me, back to being scripted. I have composed myself since last time, and I'm ready to just knock out this review, so let's go. Right off the bat, I will admit this episode is better than last time. A low bar. That doesn't, make it all better, though. I still find Ice Queendom as a whole rather disappointing, but we'll get to that later. Watch this. They, land, and it's on this large, flat plain, and it kind of looks like the ground, or at least like the flat roof you would find on an office building. And Blake and Weiss are 20 feet apart, but then 2 shots later, they're suddenly back on a tile roof, and they're a foot apart. Quality. But I don't want to be a party pooper. Aside from this moment, the rest of the episode actually has much better animation quality. We can finally see what it is they've been holding off on their budget for so long, and it's mostly Yang. Good for her. It's about time Yang got some love in Ice Queendom. Seriously, everyone else in Team RWBY gets nightmares except for Yang. Always getting shafted, the poor girl. Anyways, it's neat finally actually getting to see Yang show off her semblance. It's a shame this is literally the only time in the whole show we're probably gonna get to see it though. If you weren't a RWBY fan and Ice Queendom was your first look at the material, I wonder if this would confuse someone. Semblances haven't really been very well explained here. Would they be able to figure out that this is Yang's semblance and how it works? I'm not so sure. But yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful, I will admit. It's neat finally getting to actually see Big Nicholas. He's been in a world of Remnant and we've seen his painting in the show, but this is the first time he's real and moving and stuff. I wonder who they'll get to be his voice actor for the English dub. Whoever they pick, I hope they go with a more Santa Claus-inspired ho 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 type of deal for his laugh, because Big Nicholas's fairy tale is Santa Claus, and I think that'd be cute. Ah yes, the Nobody Patrol. Like I said last time, Jean and his squad are totally pointless. They've added absolutely nothing in the long run, and you could have cut him and the others out entirely, and nothing would have been lost. His sword was only helpful with saving Ruby from her nightmare, which we could have come up with some other excuse to help her. His cape has actually been completely pointless entirely. We didn't need a sloppily animated fight with the Jacques statue. Jean's inclusion was just a giant waste of time and animation effort, and I really don't know why they bothered to include him so much. I just fucking realized, bitch, where the hell are your pants? I knew her thighs were showing, but I hadn't realized she's essentially in a battle bikini. The fuck? The whole plot point of Ruby needing to figure out why her gun is backwards feels silly. This whole thing seems very superfluous. It's presented as if solving this mystery is a big deal, but the more I think about it, the more it didn't really need to exist. She realizes off-screen this isn't the real nightmare, somehow. Don't know how she figured that one out, but okay, I'll roll with it. Anyways, the trickety trick with her gun being backwards is that the Grim hides in your shadow, and your shadow stretches out behind you. But when Ruby figures it out, she doesn't shoot it facing away or anything. The whole "why is my gun backwards" shtick feels pointless. Honestly, the barely touched on idea of figuring out this isn't the real Grim and realizing it hides in your shadow sounds like a much more relevant plot point for Ruby to solve. The backwards gun thing feels like a random last addition to the story. But also why didn't Juniper tell the girls this? Both nightmares they face in this episode hide in their shadows, so that kind of implies that's how they all work. Why didn't Pyrrha, Ren, and Nora tell Ruby this factoid? If it's supposed to be that Jean's nightmare wasn't in his shadow, why? What made his Grim different from these two? Especially since the one inside Blake right now was the one that's inside Jean. Once again, Ice Queendom does not actually do a good job explaining any of its concepts. Hey, it's just me diving in, reminding you once again about my merch stuff. I still got cool stuff, I got more ideas along the way. And also, like I promised last time, if you have a super chat, I will highlight your comments in the next video. Well, it's the next video, let's discuss some super chats. Leon has given me 2 super chats. The first one says, I wonder if the curse that John had is actually in the second sword he had because that's the only thing getting rid of the first curse. But that should be explained in the story, and shouldn't be my own headcanon or personal theory. Which I agree with 100%. That's the thing with a lot of Ice Queendom not explaining things, is we can come to conclusions, but it would be better for the show to better define it. A lot of people say show, don't tell, and I think, honestly, the best way to go about it is to show and tell. Some things can be explained with just visuals, other things, especially like the complexity of magical fantasy worlds like RWBY, needs something a bit more explicitly stated. And Leon's second comment is, what if the show spent its time, instead of recycling the same boring dialogue, it had interesting dialogue that fleshed out the world a little bit better? For example, if the nightmare fed off one of the 7 deadly sins that you are most vulnerable to, which I think is an amazing idea, because I just really like the 7 deadly sins, and I like it when things play with those concepts. And just like how you have in your comment, I think it's a lot of fun to theorize which of the sins would best affect which character. Everyone give a big ol' shout out to Leon, what an awesome person, for donating with the super chats. If you have a comment and you want to get highlighted in the next video, leave me a super chat and I'll read yours out loud too. Back to what I was saying. Oh no, it looks like Ruby's caught in someone's porn fantasy. How is she gonna get out of this one? Not to worry, Ruby overcomes this threat by activating her silver eyes. What? I honestly don't know what to say about this, but it's bad. This is not good. 1, it undermines the impact of seeing this happen for the first time during Pyrrha's death. 2, it's supposed to happen when you think about those who must be protected. I can assume she's thinking about protecting Weiss, but it kinda just looks like Ruby activates bullshit eye lasers out of nowhere here. 3, why doesn't Ruby question this afterwards? Sure, she could chalk it up to, it was just weird dream stuff, but all of her other abilities, like her semblance, works exactly like how it does in the real world. No one else got extra eye lasers in the dream fantasy. Would she not question why her eyes suddenly disintegrated a Grimm? 4, if I thought newcomers was going to be confused by Yang's semblance reveal, they definitely are going to be lost when it comes to this. In Ruby proper, her silver eyes aren't a deus ex machina, but in Ice Queendom they definitely come across as one. Ruby saves the day not by utilizing any of the skills she's learned on this adventure, but by pulling random eye beams out of her ass. Great job. Also, this saves Weiss. It just hammers home how making Blake become a nightmare version of herself was also entirely pointless. All she's done as a nightmare is just distract Weiss, which she could have done easily without having to become Femi Adam. Rather than just let Weiss have her actual story arc, they arbitrarily decide evil Blake has to actually be the final boss for no reason. Dumb! It's called Ice Queendom! I wanted it to be about Weiss's queendom! The many shots of Shion's hourglass would hold a lot more weight if they didn't all look exactly like they have the same amount of flowers in it every time. Like, we're at the end, and Shion's acting like they're at the edge of their semblance and whatnot. We should have like 3 flowers left in here, not like 27, not the same as always. What's this? The person whose well-being was our real main concern for the majority of the story has to sit in the background and watch as Blake and Yang take center stage instead? Why does that sound so familiar? The final fight looks great. Honestly, it's incredible. The choreography of the squad fighting Blake is cool and fun, and it looks beautiful. I'm disappointed this wasn't a fight versus evil Weiss though, which feels like, you know, what the actual plot was supposed to be. The whole evil Blake thing taking over at the end feels rushed and just detracts from the promise of fighting evil Weiss. The girls have been squaring off against evil Weiss all volume, establishing more and more how they've been learning to handle their own against her, learning her tricks, her moves, her abilities, etc. But rather than get to pay off any of the girls finally overcoming such a threat, they just suddenly make it Blake at the very end. It just feels like I got cheated out of the final boss fight they've been setting up this whole time, you know? But I will admit, all 4 girls teaming up at the very end was pretty fucking dope. That was the best part, actually. You did well, Jean. Shut up, bitch. No, he didn't. Homeboy did jack shit. And then that's it. They're done in the dream world. There's still 1 more episode left, though, which is like weird. Episode 12 is titled The Best Day Ever, which is the same title as the first episode of Volume 2. So I don't know, it might just be that. Anyways, I want to talk about some of my thoughts about the whole nightmare stuff real quick. I think overall, it's a concept that has a lot of neat ideas, but almost no refinement. A lot of the things were very poorly explained at best and caused more questions that ended up muddying up important plot points. The story as a whole is repetitive, painfully so. It could have easily been trimmed down by a few episodes, or have just been a movie instead. The abysmal animation animation quality from last time makes it hard to recommend Ice Queendom, even knowing that the animation gets pretty good this time, and was really good to start. Ironically, it's a lot like Volume 1 of RWBY. Similarly, I've had a hard time recommending Volume 1 of RWBY to people because even though I know the beginning and the ending has such great animation and is a lot of fun with the story, the middle of the season is boring and ugly looking. I think there was too many ideas thrown at the wall that left not enough room to better develop what was important. Like I've already said, Jean was pointless, and Nightmare Blake was pointless. I would have rather cut those elements out to instead service the rest of the show that was more integral to the plot proper with Weiss. Don't have Jean rile up the sillies, have Yang and Ruby do that. Don't drag Pyrrha and the baby Weiss army to the final fight. They add very little, and beating the Jacques statue could have been a mini-boss for the girls in an earlier episode, kinda like when they beat Grumpy Klein. And more importantly, it's a shame that Weiss doesn't really get to actually interact with people. I think having Weiss interacting with her father, mother, sister, and brother with like actual conversations would have helped flesh her out and help us and maybe also the rest of Team RWBY to understand why Weiss is the way she is. How her home life affected her personality to turn into this nightmare version of herself. Wasted potential is what I'd say. The whole thing is neat, but poorly executed. It's slow, it's repetitive, the animation dips so low in quality at times. Anyways, now for a fun segment called Random Nitpicks that I've had about the whole animation stuff within the Nightmare. Sometimes Weiss's hat has this little extra bit on the sides, and sometimes it doesn't. How many baby Weisses accompany Jean and Pyrrha at the end? Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's like 12. I don't know. Blake's weapons, once she becomes a nightmare, change constantly in size. Sometimes the short one is like a dagger, sometimes it's like a sword, sometimes the bigger one is like a Zweihander, sometimes it's like a little bit longer than a sword. In one shot, they're depicted as super thin, but in most other shots, they have significant width to them. And last but not least, the sizes of the relics change constantly. And it's not like the actual relics, like the lamp, where they show us they can change in size. These Ice Queendom relics just change, sometimes in between shots. Sometimes they're palm-sized, sometimes they're as big as someone's head. Small enough to disappear in Ruby's fist, big enough to dwarf Jean's hand. It's just all over, no consistency. So yeah, that's about it. There is one more episode left. I am literally just expecting some rehashing of the first episode of Volume 2. We'll see, I guess.
They're the same picture.
It's just one of those days when you don't want to wake up. Everything is fucked. Everybody sucks.
Shout out to my $10 patrons. You're all amazing. Nako, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, Classy Critic, Noah Perkins, Sunny Shy, Azoth, Great Bar, Pentamenta, Jake, Amber, Hype Man, Zero to Hero, Keithan, Isaiah, Joseph, Scaring Crows, Danny Boy, Mary, Messiah Complex, Jacob, Renji, and Virus O. Ice Queendom's almost over. It's been a weird one. The whole thing's been a weird one. What did you think of this episode? Like, it was good. Like, sure, it was fine. What do you think about the whole Nightmare stuff overall? And what do you think is gonna be with the next episode? That's so weird to bookend this show with like just stories that are completely unrelated to the Nightmare main plot. Whatever. Any and all thoughts and opinions, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to see them. And I'll see you in the last episode of Ice Queendom's review next time. Bye bye.